Hey everyone, it's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today on the show, we have our very good friend Shay. I'm so excited about this show. How you doing today, Shay?
Very good, Jerry. Good to see you. Good to be here.
So what's been up today? I thought it was going to be a sunny day, but it's a little cold.
I know, but it's been a typical Saturday, for me at least, is getting up, um, doing some chores, and making sure that after a week of hustling, I have some downtime, catch up with some reading, and mostly just making sure that I wash my dishes, laundry is done, garage is clean, carpet is vacuumed. So,
Nice, doing the chores.
oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. For those of us that might not, or those of us, or those of everyone watching outside, um, tell us something about you and tell us something about the projects that you're working on.
Okay. So some of the projects that I worked on is that I've been doing for a while is the Startup Grind Lansing. It's a community network of entrepreneurs, and we have a chapter here in Lansing. So there's a global Startup Grind network, and then there are regional chapters. Lansing has its own chapter. It was launched in 2015. I got involved with it in 2017. Since 2018, I've been part of chapter as a co-director. So part of our team's responsibility is to launch events where we invite entrepreneurs and then have an audience for them to share their story. We also do other networking events for the same chapter, but that's what we do for our membership. Besides Startup Grind, I'm also a full-time employee at an economic consulting firm, Anderson Economic Group. The CEO of the firm also knows Jerry because he did visit the Fledge maybe a year ago. So
Yeah.
So in the morning, I work as an economic consultant. We do litigation projects or litigation economics. But for passion, we do Startup Grind. We have a really good team that also involves local entrepreneurs. And in addition to that, before COVID, life was different during COVID. I just make sure that family is doing good.
Yeah. And speaking of that, it would be remiss of us to not mention your rock star wife as well in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Why don't you tell everyone who you're married to, if you don't mind?
Absolutely, I would love to, and she would love to hear that too. So my wife is actually a program manager at LEAP, Lansing Economic Area Partnership. So a few things. She moved to Lansing in 2017, and then she got involved with LEAP in 2018. I've been living in Lansing. I moved to Lansing in 2010, went to MSU, and they got involved with the entrepreneurial community. And then I made some network got to know some people, and I thought I was really good at it. But then when my wife joined LEAP and she got involved in the kind of projects she got herself involved in, I just learned so much about what's going on in the community. People like Jerry, the foundation like the Fledge, what LEAP does, what other stakeholders are doing. So her part of the job is to run a few programs that impact a lot of entrepreneurs, not just the one that we normally see on the TV, but also those who may not have all the resources, but still have really good vision and passion to pursue their life goals.
Yeah. So does she have a name?
Yes, her name is Anna Mughal. Normally, if you go to MLive, recently there was an ad from LEAP that was talking about the program that she run, one and all. So if you want to learn more about Anam, go to purelansing.com, go to About Us, and you will find her there.
And watch a future episode of Every Damn Day.
Absolutely.
And I do just want to give another shout out to One and All. That has been my dream for so long, and she helped make that come true, and just spectacular. So,
but amazing, yep.
But let's wrap back around. This was Cindy who said, "What is her name?" So it's Anum, ANUM.
Can I type here?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Not in the private, in the comments.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, and just to reiterate about one and all. I sometimes wonder if I got involved with the entrepreneurial projects in 2012, 2013, if one and all was there back then, my career trajectory within entrepreneurial world might have been different. So
Yeah.
when I see what her program is doing and what she's doing, I think it could be a game changer for the region. So
Yeah, it is a game changer. It's already working, and poverty will be gone soon in this region.
I hope. Yep.
I,
Yep.
I truly believe that. I'm so confident in that. But anyways, let's get back to, you did what everybody does. I asked you about you and your projects, and you jumped into the projects. Where were you born and raised? Where did you go to school? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So I was born and raised in one of the biggest cities in the world, 7,000 miles from here in the country called Pakistan. I was raised and born in a city called Karachi. Um, so I moved to USA in 2007. I was still in my teens when I moved here. So my brought up in Pakistan actually helped me kind of realize certain things that kind of dictate what my career trajectory eventually got into. So my brought up as someone growing up in a typical middle class family in a developing country um, um, involved making sure that we hustle every day, figure out how to get around certain things and still get the job done, and take care of the family. So.
And then when you came here, did you go to high school here if you were still in your teens, or?
I did most of my high schooling in Pakistan, but
Oh, okay.
I came here. I first moved to Bay City, Michigan. If you know Michigan, that's where Bay City is. And then I went to a community college called Delta College, and
Yeah.
I've been there for 2.5 years, and then transferred to MSU in 2010. I was undecided as my major because I was one of those people who wanted to try everything, and I want to finish everything. So I did try a few things from ASL to Spanish classes to guitar, anything that's one of the benefits of going to community colleges because it's affordable. So there's some room to kind of experiment. But going to a community college here in the USA was an eye opening because when you come from a country like Pakistan, where a lot is dictated by the government, it took me a few years to unbrainwash myself. And then community college helped.
What did you ultimately choose as a degree?
I chose political science, public policy, and there's a story behind it if you want to ask that as a follow-up question.
What's the story behind it?
I came in 2007. That was when politics in USA, we started to enter into a Great Recession, and you had presidential elections where President Obama and former Senator McCain was competing, and that was my first time actually watching a presidential election, a normal one, a sane one. But while I was here in the USA, I didn't know much English back then. I was just mesmerized the way politics could be discussed here, elections could be won, and things could be settled, and that kind of helped me figure out, you know what, maybe I want to do public policy, political science, because in a country like America, if you choose that, you can make some meaningful impact.
When you were comparing it and saying a sane election, are you talking about back in Pakistan, or are you talking about the 2020 election in the US?
2020. Oh yeah.
What kind of government is Pakistan? Is it a democracy? Is it something else?
That's a good question. When I left the country, it was just wrapping up 80 years of a military dictator. And starting 2008, they had fresh elections, and they follow the democracy very similar to what we have in Canada, so parliamentarian democracy or government. However, in a country like Pakistan, you have certain elements of democracy, certain elements of aristocracy, certain elements of bureaucracy, they all jumble up and then run things or show. So I call it a hybrid democracy.
Yeah. Yeah, you see that like in Dubai, they're starting to vote more and do stuff like that, but they still, I think, sometimes get a little scared to let up too much control and to do the experiment. But it's progress, right? I mean, it's progressing.
It's human nature to. But I also in Pakistan, that was when I got to learn a bit more about the difference between the certain ideologies, and I don't want to go into details if that's not the goal of this, but I got to learn more about conservative policies, not policies, ideologies, progressive ideologies. So I started learning more when I started reading more, and it's a continuous progress or process.
Yeah. So I mentioned Dubai, so I'm going to stick in that area for a second. I knew a lot of people from Pakistan when I was in Dubai. There's a huge population from, people that are taxi drivers all the way to people that run IT companies or are in the construction world. And everybody, I mean, from the taxi drivers on up, they are entrepreneurial, man. I couldn't take a ride anywhere without hearing an idea that once they found out what I did and who I was or what I was working on, everybody had an idea. What's the entrepreneurial spirit in Pakistan?
I can only suggest or comment based on when I was there. I know a lot more about now because Startup Grind is also taking doing pretty well in Pakistan too. Their local chapters, there's the regional chapter in Pakistan. So things have changed since I moved here. But in countries like Pakistan or any developing country, when certain segments of a community went through a struggle, you actually have no other choice but to figure out how to get out of it. So when you start to figure out how to get out of it, you start coming up with ideas. The only issue in a country like Pakistan at that point was when you have an idea, you don't have resources to take that idea to a different level. I'm sure back then there was no One and All program there. There were not a lot of channels where you can pitch your idea, but then there were ideas, and the ideas usually in that part of the world arise when you meet certain struggles, you face certain pain points, and you still want to get out of it. You don't want to remain in the same cycle, and that's part of the reason why. Because in Pakistan, if you do not have certain income, and if you still want to live a healthy life or a passionate life, people figure out a way to come with something. I mean, it's a country of hustlers. Sometimes you cross the line, and that's where it leads to corruption. But when there are not a lot of laws or not strong institutions, you have people coming up with ideas.
I think you hit the nail on the head on what I saw. It's a country of hustlers. I mean, everybody was trying to move forward and use entrepreneurialism as a method to get out of poverty or to eliminate poverty. So just a little more support for everybody around here. Entrepreneurialism is the answer to so many of our social ills.
I agree with you 200%.
I know you are. Yeah, I mean,
my mom is a prime example. So, but go ahead.
Your mom is a prime example?
Yep. So my mom, she that's where I got most of my entrepreneurial genes. Is she came here. She was a school teacher back in Pakistan, but she always wanted to have her own salon and spa. But then certain limitations, certain restrictions, she could not. Didn't have money. Didn't realize or didn't know how to use her talent to have her own salon. But when she came here, she realized that there's a way. I mean, you can get a license, you can get a few clients, those few clients can get more clients, but she hustled. The point was she had an idea. She figured that her ideas could have a better platform in a country like USA. When she found that platform, she progressed. So, but yeah.
So, I often say the phrase that genius is lost in poverty. and it keeps me awake at night. I think about the people in this neighborhood who are geniuses that aren't getting the opportunity, they don't have the mentors or whatever. Do you see that in Pakistan? I mean,
Well,
what?
yes. Um, Again, based on what I've seen in 2007, in Pakistan, unlike USA, we don't have established, efficient, or mature local governments. So everything sometimes run from the central government, and depending on who is running the central government, your part of the district or the city may get some resources or sometimes do not. So generations have realized that in order for them to get out of poverty is to stop relying on what the government is suggesting. It's good when they have some platforms such as One in Law, or if they come up with some programs. But what they have realized is that in order to be more entrepreneurial, one thing that they need to have in common is to have a tight-knit community. So once you have a tight-knit community, if someone is struggling, someone can pick them up and still move the needle. And I'm assuming that's pretty common in every other part of the world, because most of the world is not as developed as USA.
Yeah.
So having a tight-knit community is a prerequisite.
So we talked about Startup Grind. We're talking about Pakistan. We talked about your day job, and Patrick Anderson, right? So I want to make sure we say his name real quick.
Yeah.
And do you have anything on the horizon? What are you looking at? Are you going to start another company? Are you going to do some invention? Or are you going to write a book? Anything like that?
I did start a couple of companies before I got back into in the workforce as an employee. I do know that eventually I actually have a book in which every time I have an idea, I write it down so that I don't forget. What I realize is that I know that I will have a company. I know dead sure that I will start a company again at some point in my life. But I also realized few years ago when I started a few companies and failed, is that the gaps that I've noticed in my way of functioning sometimes may get addressed if I get to experience working in well-run companies. So I need to learn a few of those things while I kind of refine my ideas and move the needle forward. But yes, I will start a company at some point in my life. When, that I do not know. But one way I can stay involved in the ecosystem is through Startup Grind, is having someone in my household, Anam, who's part of the community too. So and making sure that I know what the community demands are. If at some point I start a company, I don't want to live in an unrealistic world.
Yeah. So I love what you're doing. I think that's wise that you're doing that, because sometimes, you're too young to be a consultant. You're too young to write a book, right? I mean, you're not too young to do it, but getting beat up a little bit will really toughen you up and help you in that future.
Yeah.
So, and I can't think of a better place to do that than with Anderson. I mean, you guys do some cool stuff.
One thing I learned about Anderson Economic Group is they define what an organized firm, regardless if it's a service oriented firm or consulting firm or a product oriented firm. If anyone gets to work in Anderson Economic Group, even for a little bit, by the time you get out of it, you are so organized, because you can be a really free thinking entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs tend to be sometimes a bit more erratic when it comes to certain things, that's for sure. I mean, we struggle sometimes to keep our thoughts together. But one thing we should always not compromise on is having a focus, having certain things that needs to be organized. That is something Anderson Economic Group has been doing for more than 25 years. So what I do learn from there is something I did not experience before that. So So
Yeah.
I'm pretty blessed.
So you've said the phrase push the needle forward a couple of times. What's something you do every damn day to push your needle forward, whatever, and even if you want to define what your mission is, as a preface, but what do you do every day to push the needle forward?
I that's I may end up answering a pretty vague manner, but one of the things that I realized that I want to do every day is to have my plan of thoughts, or if or at least like a to list. I've been maintaining my to-do list for almost 2 years now consistently. There are things that I'm not able to finish it every day, but once it's written, I know that I have to go back to it. That's one thing I learned that I have to do in order to be or remain sustainable in the entrepreneurial world. Reading is another thing that I think that is something that we all can do if possible, because that's way better than going to a school and reading books,
Yeah.
taking exams, and then forgetting about it. Because once you start reading books, you realize what kind of books you want to read, at what pace, at what point in your life. When I struggled on many fronts, like especially when I was running 2 startups, one of the best things that helped me was reading books. Once you read books, you do realize that you're the only one struggling. Your story is not the unique one, and maybe you get to learn from it too. So reading books, making sure that your plan, your whatever you want to do in a day, a week, or month is somewhat in a more structured manner, and staying involved with the community. So Start Grind does offer me that platform.
Yeah. So is there a book you're reading right now that you want to shout out?
Oh, there's a book. There are a couple of books that I started. Sometimes I get bored with one book for
Yeah.
reading 2 chapters, so I start. So there are 3 books that I'm reading at the same time. One of them is by Chris Wallace. It's a book that it's a political thriller, in which he talks about the days when USA in the World War II planned the Manhattan Project, developed a bomb.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a book that I got to see it. It's a pretty good. I mean, it's a lot of history. You agree with it or you not? That's up to the reader. But it's a pretty good book. There's another book that I'm reading from Kirk Russell. It's a conservative philosophy. I like it. I just want to, because sometimes especially during the elections, we talk about liberalism or progressivism or conservatism, and we always comment on things before knowing what those ideologies are. So while I also read about progressive ideology, I will also read about the conservative ideology. So that's one book. And the third book is actually something I really enjoy. It's called Why Nations Fail. It's a very good book. And I have a habit of forgetting the authors, but not the titles. So
Yeah. You and I are a lot alike in that regard. I jump across different books. I forget the title or forget the authors. Like I'm going to tell you, I'm reading right now, Utopia for Realists, and I have no idea who wrote that book.
Yep.
But it's a book on the evidence behind universal basic income, sort of like what we're talking about with One and All, but a little bit more expanded. You're very wise, Shay. I mean, I'm always sitting here trying to figure out how old is my guest, and I know you're a lot younger than me, because if you were a teenager in 2007, I was a teenager in the 80s. So, did I say older or younger? I meant younger.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it. Don't worry about it.
But I really like talking to you. So we daisy chain the shows together, and yesterday on the show we had somebody who Jonathan and Christabel from Vegin, and their question for you is, what's your biggest entrepreneurial fear?
And that's a very good question. It's because there are many fears. I would lie if I say that there is Not many. The first startup, I didn't have many fears. The second startup, I knew that I had failed once. So there were fears that crept in. Um, one of the fear is that I sometimes need to know exactly when I know that the idea that I am pursuing or working hard to turn into a product or a service is it needs some pivoting or needs some tinkering, because sometimes what I think is the right way, the world doesn't think that way. I fear that sometimes when you are in an entrepreneurial world, it looks so cool and so nice to talk about that you stop getting honest responses. And sometimes you only get honest responses when you actually have an actual customer who has nothing to do with you, doesn't even know you, test your product or service, doesn't like it, and gives you a feedback. How do I react to that? That's something I fear about, because I want to make sure that I take that feedback and then fix something rather than saying, oh, you know what? Customers always complain.
So, oh, go ahead.
Because it happened. It happened. I mean, I do absolutely believe that the few times that, or the areas when I could improve while I was running the startups, I was living in a different bubble than what the real world was suggesting.
Yeah. So you said a couple things that I want to kind of ask you about. You said that your first one was a failure, and at the Fledge here, we try to stay away from that word, and we either say succeed or learn. Did you learn a lot? Did you walk away with an education?
More than I learned in my undergrad. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I do in my undergrad, but besides
yeah, buying books. I'm a father of a senior at MSU, so I feel the struggle.
Yep.
But I doubt it was a failure. I think it was a jumping point, right? It's like a video game. You level up.
Oh, that's true. Back then, failure. Sometimes I think if it's okay to use the term, again, you and I may have a different opinion on when to use the word failure. I think if we fail, or if we are unable to make decisions that do not move the needle when you're running the company, or if some of the decisions that you make do not get you the desired results, in my book, you failed in certain decisions. Now, those failures can lead to some lessons learned. And in my case, there were plenty of them, but I only learned when I failed. I cannot keep learning and not failing. I know I just put together a really convoluted phrase, but
no, I think that's really important, because with the Fledge, we're trying to create a mindset, right? We're trying to eliminate the excuses and the fears and all of that. And, I don't want anybody to put their house up for a second mortgage to finance something that they don't even know. That's not really what I mean. But walk away with, even when the place is burning down, grab what you can and walk away with the value that you can. And, you actually said that as you were moving into the second venture, you brought that with you. And even knowing that, you needed to get beat up a little bit. And if you're under a corporation, you can take those blows a little bit easier and not screw your family, for lack of a better phrase.
No. And now that I'm thinking and reflecting, one of the failures let's rephrase, one of the lessons I learned is I need to improve certain aspects of my personality if I ever desire to start a company that involves multiple people. I do have a personality that sometimes go well with certain people. Sometimes I piss people off. In my case, I sometimes tend to piss more people off than otherwise. So, however, it's okay when we are running a talk show, if we are if you're running an organization, but when you are expecting other people to work with on your idea, that's basically your vision, you have to figure out a way to compromise on certain things. So that's part of my personality that I'm trying to develop. Getting married was the first thing I did.
I have the very similar problem.
Yep.
I've pissed off a lot of people in my life.
Yeah. So
the other thing that I think you said that's just a gem is, and I'll phrase it as, fall in love with the problem, not in love with your solution. But you use the term pivot. I often talk about every endeavor is a series of experiments, and you've got a hypothesis and you're testing it. And if you're wrong, then be wrong and adjust to it. And that's so hard, isn't it?
absolutely, because again, it's human nature. I mean, if your entire idea or a vision is built upon a hypothesis that you think, if you test it, the results will be what you want or what you expect. And if it's the otherwise, then it takes a while for you, or it takes a certain kind of personality or personality that gets developed after experiences to kind of acknowledge that, what you experimented was wrong. This is the right answer. Let's pivot. Some people are able to do it. And again, I mean, every entrepreneur, just like all fingers are not equal. I mean, every entrepreneurial personality is different too. Some people are more emotionally attached to their idea. Some people, if they have had like family background in business, they may learn from those experiences quicker. So in my case, I grew up in a very typical middle-class family where entrepreneurial spirit was not there. I mean, we always worked in a company and then make sure you survive and feed kids. So I didn't have many examples from coming from a family. So when I heard, or when I used to hear that, oh, your idea may not work, my first reaction was, maybe they're wrong. So it's hard. There's no right or wrong answer. It takes a while. Everybody will react to it differently. Everybody will learn on their own. In their own way. So it takes a while.
Do you think that, I'm going to bring us back to Startup Grind for a little bit. Is that one of the points of Startup Grind, is to hear those struggles and those failures, and to know, you can look up on that stage and see somebody and say, man, they're talking the way I feel right now. It's not just all glossy, blah, blah, blah. Everything's been great.
Yep. I think you are spot on. One of the goals when I became the core director is to, every time we invite someone, regardless of their successes, regardless of the background, regardless how many companies they've formed, whenever we have an audience, we always want our speakers or guests to talk about failures, the pain points, the struggles, not just with the business, but also family-wise too. And when we start having those conversations, that's when we can connect the audience with the guests more. Because if someone is sharing, I remember Ruben Levinson, who is the director of Startup Grind now. Someone asked when he was the guest that how he is able to raise kids who have seen a decent amount of wealth around them compared to when Ruben was growing up, who grew up in a very humble family, not a lot of money. Structure was not there, and then it got to him emotionally. So every audience want to listen about how entrepreneurial journey impacts the family as well, because once you all get into this journey, it's not just your personal life. It's just not your professional life. Your personal life gets affected too. And yeah.
And I you carry that risk threshold into your family, right? I mean, you put everything at risk, then you're putting everything at risk. And that might mean your kid's not going to be able to get horse riding lessons or whatever rich people do.
Well, absolutely. That's a very good point. I remember one of the speakers said that when they started their business, they one of the things they did to ensure that they start teaching their kids to live far below their means, because the parents thought if their business started to struggle, their kids won't get to experience a dramatic shift in their lifestyle. So they thought that, you know what, even while the business is doing good, or even if they're doing well as entrepreneurs, they want to ensure that their kids think that they're living a very average lifestyle, so that if there's a hiccup, they don't get impacted.
Yeah. Very, very wise words right there.
It's hard. We don't have kids, so I don't know what's going to happen once we have.
I commuted back and forth to Dubai for 12 years, from 2001 to or 2002 to 2015 is the last time I went, and I missed a lot. I missed a lot of things. I mean, I watched, Skype. I was watching basketball games and stuff like that in the middle of the night, and it's one of my things I wish I would have done a little bit different.
Yeah. No, I think there's not a single family who is running a business or starting a company have to juggle those duties too, and then figure out where there's a balance.
Yeah.
And it's hard to please everybody. It's not just your customers, not your stakeholders, but also the family too. And one thing I learned is that once you are in this entrepreneurial journey, make sure you're mentally ready to be the bad cop 24/7.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
So on the show tomorrow, we have an author. Her name is Melissa, and she started the Social Gap Experiment, which is social media where creatives can kind of share stories and all of that. And I think they're forming a book out of it. What question would you like me to pass on to Melissa, similar to what Christabel and Jonathan passed on to you?
Great. One of the questions that I have for Melissa is that when she is writing and when she is drafting certain passages, does she visualize those characters or scenarios in her head as if it's happening in real time? Does that lead to her being a better writer, or does it help her become more creative? So I'm just curious, because I that's how I like to read, but if at any point if I like to write, I will try to do that too. So if she's any suggestions for us, that would be great.
So you said you wanted to try to write something, or that you do write or whatever. Do you do the same thing? Do you visualize the characters? Are you writing fiction or nonfiction?
That's a very good question. It would be a fiction, but the storyline may be based on actual events. One of the things that I'm going to be doing is reading Obama's 3 books that he had written. Actually, Anam just got me a gift of The Promised Land, so I haven't read any of those Obama's books, so I'm gonna start with The Promised Land and then go backwards to see how much he has changed. But if anyone wants to write a book, I heard that reading Obama's books would help them a lot to become a better writer. So we'll see.
That's really good advice. And now I'm super curious about that book, because I've been thinking about the American dream and how for some of us it's real and you can do it. And there's some of us that are left behind, that it has never been real and it's never been something that is true in their world that they can see and touch and feel. So is that what that book is about? Is about the Promised Land, or the lack of the promise?
Again, I haven't read the book yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that. However, I'm still in my head. The more I live in the United States, this is my 13th year in the country. I have friends who are from every walk of life. I'm very fortunate to have been around a community of people who are rich, poor, young, old, regardless of the age, regardless of the background. I don't know if you know, I was a valet at Radisson for a couple of years while I was running a business, because I had to earn some income while I was running Spalot. So I was working as a valet at Radisson. Made quite a bit of money. Actually, valet is pretty fun to do. And then I got to meet with so many people. And I since then I've been redefining my definition of American promise. I think it's a blessing. It's just that its application is different for everybody. But it's still there. That's one thing is for sure.
Well, I am glad that you are here and you are participating in it, and that you are helping to bring empathy to it and to bring poverty needs to be eliminated worldwide. And there's no reason why you and I and a NUM and all these other wonderful people in our ecosystem can't start right here in mid-Michigan. So I love you, Shay. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And I always ask the guests to take us out with one thing, whatever that might be. You want to take us out with something? It could be advice. It could be deuces. It could be whatever.
Say that again. So, as in, you want me to say something about the event, or
yeah, we could do that or anything.
If one thing I know about Jerry, I may not have said to you before, but what you are doing is something that many people just think about it. When it comes to application of it or execution of it, only a very small percentage of people are able to do it. If you are able to do it, and since you're doing it, I've seen you doing it. You will. I'm pretty sure that you will go down in the history of Lansing as someone who have not just moved the needle, but shifted the needle. I mean, moving and shifting is two different things. So I'm just glad to be a part of your show. I'm just glad to be a part of your community, and I get to learn from you, and then hopefully I get an opportunity to continue to be part of your vision. So thanks.
Hey,
Thanks.
we're a community. We're a team. We're doing this together. You guys teach me stuff all of the time. Leap helps to enable things all of the time. And wonderful people like you let me do this show, because without you, it's just me sitting here in front of a horoscope tapestry talking about some rambling. I wouldn't even be able to know what to talk about. So wasn't fishing for a compliment, and you brought tears to my eyes by saying that. But
I mean, it's absolutely true. I mean, I brag about starting a business and failing it. I mean, you start something or a vision or a concept that it will take maybe multiple generations to realize it, but you started it. That's the point. Hopefully, at some point, it will someone, if I'm thinking about like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, it will continue, because that's how societies get out of that typical mindset of dependency, and entrepreneurialism is the way to go. So if you're doing it, that's far better than what governments do.
And we will end with that, if that's okay with you, Shay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir.
Likewise, Jerry. Yep. Take care.